All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for having me. Really a joy to be here and tell our story a little bit. I will hold questions at the end. I can answer pretty much anything, but I have been stumped before, so watch out for that. But what I'm going to do is go through really our story, our mission and how we came to be. We'll dive into the ingredients and a little bit more technical aspects of our products. Sort of our launch history and how we sort of approach that and attack that, and our target market, and then some facts about our product. And ultimately, I've been with the company going on 6 years, and I started when we were in just 25 restaurant locations. So I was buckled up in the front seat of this rocket ship, and I've experienced the growth firsthand, and some of our largest partnerships and biggest moments. It's been really I can't thank whoever is involved up there enough for lending me the opportunity that I've had at Impossible Foods. It's been really great. But I lived and breathed restaurants, so I accidentally used all my experience to really fold into my role here at Impossible. And I am the head of culinary. Technically, my focus is primarily with sales, but I get to work with R&D. I get to work with our product teams to really understand the bookends of our product, how we think about beginning product development, and then at the end, whenever we're getting ready to launch, I get some really big involvement there as well. And then marketing, it's just great. Like culinary, we're a food business, so being at the center of the culinary efforts at Impossible has been really great for myself and my team. But our story began in 2011. Our founder, Pat Brown, Dr. Pat Brown, was a professor at Stanford for 25 years. He was a pediatrician prior to that. A couple of his accolades: he founded Genetic Microarray, which was for the advancement of cancer research. He also co-founded the Library of Sciences, which published all medical findings for free. So you can tell he's been on the Nobel Prize list, the short list, several times over, and obviously he's contributed to the world in a really compelling way. But he took a sabbatical at Stanford to really understand what was the next world problem, what could he utilize and devote his life to, his next project, and that was part of his job at Stanford, was to really just research whatever he could get his hands on. And he realized that animal agriculture was one of the largest detriments in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, water usage, and land. So a couple of things, a couple of stats. Disclaimer: I'm an omnivore. I eat everything. So I'm not going to go beating down your doors. And I don't think our company shames meat. I think we celebrate it in a way that has never been thought of before. So, but a couple of things just from a culinary perspective, and a person who eats meat can still, some of the factors and facts that came out of some of the research that Pat did in the early days were so compelling to me. Like the demand for meat will grow 25%, or excuse me, will grow 60 to 75% over the next 25 years. So 60 to 75% growth over the next 25 years. Of all non-ice land, meaning inhabitable land in the world, 45% is currently devoted to animal agriculture, either the crops to feed them or the animals, housing the animals themselves. So it's kind of a math problem. You don't have to crunch the numbers too hard. How do we grow at 60 to 75% when currently 45% of the world's land mass is already devoted to animal agriculture? Not that hard to realize that we can't sustain that type of growth without additional resources or another way to do it. So how do you think about that? Well, Pat knew as well as everybody on this call, you can't change people's diets. People like what they like. They want to eat what they want to eat. And in terms of meat, we don't really have a replacement or something that satiates us in the same way. So to create a product that really can stand up to the most discerning meat opinion or meat palate, we had to really dig deep and try to develop something that would be that compelling one-to-one replacement. And so we started our development in 2011, and that was, talking to farmers and talking to scientists and talking to chefs. There was a lot of people involved in the origin story of Impossible. And really asking the simple question of what makes meat taste like meat. Why is it delicious? Why do we crave it? One of the more, I guess, meat existentialism, you can smell meat and you sort of gravitate towards it. It makes you salivate. And you can maybe smell the difference between chicken and beef as it's cooking, but it both inherently smells like meat. You know when meat is cooking. Your brain knows it. So what drives that? Well, that was part of the development. And one of the biggest discoveries that we found is that heme, short for hemoglobin, myoglobin in meat, specifically leg hemoglobin or from legumes in our product, is what we use. But heme occurs naturally in all living things, but it occurs abundantly in meat. It's the flavor driver in meat. It's also the flavor driver in our product. Molecule for molecule, it's exactly the same. But because of the abundance that you would find in beef, look at beef versus chicken. It's an iron-containing molecule, which means it actually drives the red color. So as you look at that, beef is much more rich red in color, which means it has more heme than, say, chicken. But if you injected chicken with more heme, it would taste more like beef. It drives that iron quality on its raw state, but it catalyzes the reaction between the vitamins, amino acids, and sugars as it's cooking, not only producing the smell, but also producing the flavor that you intend to experience when you're eating meat. So we used a fermentation process. We actually tried to harvest it from the nodules of the soy root. There's these little nodules on every soy plant root. You cut them open, they're bright, rich red with heme. But man, it's really incredibly hard to harvest enough from those nodules to really drive the flavor that we're talking about. So what we leaned into was a fermentation process, similar to Belgian beer, rennet for vegetarian cheeses. I believe insulin is made in the same fashion. But we tricked a yeast to produce heme instead of alcohol through the fermentation process so that we could produce it at scale to add in the same abundance as you would find in a meat product. So we did find a way to produce it at scale, and that really became the flavor driver in our product. I didn't intend to go so technical at first, but I know my audience, and that's it was interesting to me to realize like how we got there. But it took 5 years. Right? We didn't first commercialize our product until 2016. And the way that we did that was we realized that, culinary credibility was at the forefront. But the biggest thing is, we really wanted to state our mission, and our mission was to replace animals as a food technology. I mean, that's the brass tacks of it. That takes a very long time. And again, I don't think that we are shaming meat. We are celebrating it. In order to replace it, you have to inherently love it. You have to understand it. So for us to lean in and really come to grips with that, I think that understanding meat was the segue for us to developing our product and being successful in it. So we launched in the summer of 2016 with David Chang at Momofuku Nishi. Everybody on this call knows who Dave is, and he was slated with saying that he would never put a plant-based product on his menu or plant-based meat on his menu until he tried it. And actually, I even saw him debut this product. I didn't start till a year later in the summer of 17. And I was like, man, what is this product he's endorsing? I got to go try it. I got to go see what this is about. Like, it's wild that Dave is really leaning into this product. Like, what could it possibly be? What could they be doing over there at Impossible Foods? It was still a stealth company at that point, pretty much. They didn't publish their address. I was used to showing up at the back door with my knives and saying, like, let me peel potatoes. We'll figure out the rest later, right? But at that point, I had to network my way in, but I tried a burger, and I was actually really blown away at what they were working on. And at that point, it was a 1.0 version. I'll go into what the makeup of our product is today, but we used wheat protein back at that time, and it was good, but it was great at that time. But once we came out with the 2.0 version, I realized it was lacking in so many ways. But we also cater to the known fact that as we develop ways of improving our product, we joke around that you can't change the cow, but you can change our product. So as we improve it, we will launch that and show you that, put our money where our mouth is in terms of that. But as you look at the ingredients today, if you think about meat in 3 categories: muscle tissue, connective tissue, fat, that's sort of the building blocks of any meat. There's some component therein. There's a component of muscle tissue, connective tissue, and fat. And that's how we as chefs understand how we might work with it, whether it's flashing it on the grill or braising it for a long time. You can take a cut of meat and really understand, based on that composition, what to do with it. So if you look at our muscle tissue, which creates the texture and chew, we use soy protein today because of the bioavailability of the nutrients, as well as the sort of blank slate in terms of flavor. It gives us a more blank canvas than wheat protein. Wheat protein gave us a much harder influence of flavor, so we didn't want all that. So we use soy protein for that reason. But it starts out like a dry cereal. It's a textured vegetable protein, but as it's hydrated with the other elements of the product, it creates that texture and chew that's very, very familiar to you as a meat product. So when you bite into our product, texture is very important. And we actually have individual teams, some working on texture, some working on flavor, some working on just the smell, how it hits your nose. But then if you look at our connective tissue, we use cellulose. It's a plant-based binder, jams, jellies, makes it malleable in its raw state, but it also helps to bind with water and be more cohesive in its cooked state. If you look at our fats, we use sunflower oil and coconut fat. And those fats do 2 things, specifically the coconut fat. Coconut fat melts at a little bit lower temperature than beef fat, but it renders just the same. So as you cook it in the pan, not only do you get the sizzle, but you see the rendering. So the behavioral aspects of the cooking process really matter to us. It's not only the flavor and the sensory characteristics, it is that cooking process. I've picketed in the streets internally just to make sure that we're holding true to that aspect of the product, because I do think that's really compelling. We eat with our eyes, sure, but I think that as you cook it, how appetizing that is or how familiar it is. I don't think that food is a transactional thing. I think it's an emotional experience. And if we're not diving into and really holding on to that emotion that everybody has, it's deep rooted in tradition. Everybody on this call knows how traditional people can be with their food and how protective they are with those traditions. But again, it renders the same, but it also acts as a flavor delivery system. So all these great flavors that we've produced, that our product produces, it allows it to coat your palate, and that fat allows it to sit. So a couple minutes later, after you've eaten a bite of Impossible or an Impossible burger, you have that latent meaty flavor sort of sitting on your palate, and the coconut fat really helps it to linger. And then heme, I went through it to a great deal, but that's our secret or magic ingredient. That's the IP that we have. The one thing that I didn't offer in my explanation of heme previously was that it's transformative, meaning it changes from red to brown as you cook it, which is one of the more important things, because a lot of other plant-based companies use dyes and coloring agents to color their product. And heme is that for us. In its raw state, it's rich red in color. You can see it. And I do think it's super important to point out that as you cook it, it changes from red to brown. So if you cook it to medium rare, the internal visual will represent the internal temperature. And as you cook it to 160 degrees, it will change to that brownish opaque color. So you will actually see that transformation happening. So the visual cues in cooking, you'll actually be able to experience. And I've seen with other plant-based companies, and I'm not here to shame them. I think that everybody is contributing to the space in terms of changing our opinion on plant-based from not being, a piece of cardboard that you put between 2 pieces of bread and call it a sandwich. Like, it is dynamic now. Like, there's something to talk about. So in terms of that, I think that the performance is amazing, that, you can cook it in the same way and get the same visual cues and know when to flip it, when you feel like it's done. Even the touch test, you're really diving into a behavioral response from the cooking aspect, not only the sensory aspect. I think both are so important. So I like to split those up into 2. I guess that's the marketer in me. It's from package to plate. That's an experience, like the way you see it in its package and thaw it. and open it up and cook it. And then the plate to belly experience, which is just eating it. So again, when we launched in 2016, we were only in restaurants. So anybody that was working in restaurants had experienced that package to plate, but typically a consumer was only experiencing it from the time it was finished on their plate and eating it. So it was really that we were diving in and really focusing on sensory. We later launched in retail, which again, that package to plate experience became more important. But all that development and all that work that went into it really helped us to create that compelling product, that the full experience, from the time you purchase it on the shelf to the time it ends up on your plate at home, was pretty impressive. I got to say, you know, I do work for the company, but I'm speaking from a personal note as well. Like I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to develop an understanding and lay out the information about the product. But again, I mean, I eat meat, but it's really interesting to see a product that performs in the same way. And whether or not you're talking about, obviously it's ground meat, whether or not you're talking about a formed product like a burger, a crumbled product like a taco, soups and sauces, bolognese or chili, it lends itself to the versatility of what you would expect from a ground meat protein, which is just, it's amazing. With all that, I mean, culinary experience is obviously what is probably most interesting to us, but the sustainability metrics are really a big thing as well. We do life cycle analysis on our product, meaning we understand the displacement versus the protein that we are trying to mimic, in this case 80/20 beef, for its land usage, its greenhouse gas emissions, and water usage. And I think, Victoria, you'll have to remind me, we update our life cycle analysis stats all the time. So we always try to be dead on with it. But I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of approximately 95% less land, 89% less. Go ahead.
Well, you're putting me on the spot now. That's right.
Well, you can, if you have it.
That's right. Yeah. Let me get it. It's in there.
Okay. Well, if you do drum it up, I'd love to speak intelligently on it. I can give you the rough approximations, but
yeah, no, that's not it. That's the wrong one. Stand by. Go on. I'll put it in the chat for me.
Okay. Just interrupt me whenever you get it, because we do change them all the time. We try to update them constantly and consistently so that we're speaking from a place of facts. But it's like 95% less land, 89% less emissions, and 74% less water than conventional beef. It's staggering numbers, and that's just talking about beef. We do it in all of our. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So the way meat is made today is destroying the planet we all love. So 45% of Earth's land area, more than 45%. This is, I'm not sure if this is the, pardon?
That's something different. I'm talking about.
It is, but I think it's an important, yeah. Okay, so I don't have the slide you're talking about. We don't have, but the numbers that you had, they're maybe off by a couple. So that's the gist of it. I don't think
for sure
it's gonna knock you. Yeah,
it's staggering. I mean, it's completely more efficient. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I guess the age-old question is if you eat Impossible and you can't tell the difference, what is the difference? I think that's where the rubber meets the road for us in terms of the development of the product. And we've gone from launching in small unit restaurants to then retail to then Canada, which has been a great. Victoria, I'll give you a couple minute spiel on the experience in us launching in Canada and how and what products we offer today.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're a couple of years in Canada now. We've launched, we started with the burger, the original beef burger, and we have the bulk as well, which is the 1-to-1 cooks 1-to-1 with ground meat. We also launched ready to eat breakfast. Not necessarily for breakfast, but Tim Hortons picked it up for breakfast. And it's also the Starbucks in the US. They use our RTE sausage rounds. And we most recently launched our.
Gave anyone me nicknames or?
Somebody needs to go on mute, I think. And we also launched our chicken nugget in Canada. So we have 4 SKUs and they're available in all I'll do my sales spiel. They're available in all broadline distribution and some smaller distributors too. We're really and truly, we've been working really hard with a lot of distributors and customers alike to just get the product out there and have people try it, because every time, every show I'm at, every trade show, everybody I bring the product to, they try it. And some people might have some ideas about plant-based and, oh, I tried something before and I don't want that. And they try these products that we launched in Canada, and always it's, it goes from this is fantastic, I love it, to, oh, okay, this is pretty good, to the people that didn't want to like it in the first place. So
and I think in terms of that, our offerings, we really lean into versatility and convenience in the development of our products. We do have products that lead with versatility and some that lead with convenience. To Victoria's point, our ground beef bulk is that versatile component. It starts as a raw ground meat protein. You can sort of make whatever you would expect to make from ground beef with Impossible beef. And then some of our more convenience leading products would be our chicken nuggets, our pre-cooked sausage. They're pre-formed, pre-cooked. So in terms of labor savings and or convenience, those are more convenience leading than versatile. So in terms of, the top purchase drivers for plant-based meats, health and environment are 100% the top 2 purchase drivers. But the reason people come back, the number one reason people come back, is taste. And we feel that we lead with taste. We design all of our products against the animal counterpart. We test them against the animal counterpart. So as we tested our Impossible beef, we modeled that after 80/20. We tested against 80/20, and we don't put it out unless it's as good or better than the animal counterpart via our consumer testing. We just won't launch it. And that's part of our company ethos, to really stand behind our products. We call it plant-based anxiety. I said it before. I think that when you talk about plant-based anxiety, people have an expectation that it's not going to taste very good. So we're battling that, because the products of past, the products of old, haven't been very good. There's some that are passable, but we're trying to change that. And in changing that, I don't believe that we are developing products, but we're not selling products. We're selling trust. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we put the most into these products, to make sure that they are really transcendental and compelling for those looking for that type of a product. And one of the best, my favorite stats is over 90% of the folks ordering our products in restaurants are self-identified meat eaters, or they've eaten meat within the past 90 days. And with that stat, we love our vegans and vegetarians, don't get me wrong, but we're not moving towards our mission if we are appealing and only after the vegans and vegetarians. The conversion of meat eaters or meat eaters choosing this over their meat option a couple of times a week, once a week, more than that, that's where we really start to change the trajectory and really understand. And for me, commodity farming, we saw some of the darkness behind the curtain when the pandemic hit and the production of that industry. And I do think that we owe it to ourselves to responsibly source. I think that's always been a thing, even before plant-based really became the darling child of the food industry. Responsible sourcing was a huge deal, whether that was sustainable farming of fisheries or of other animal products. I think that we got a dark glimpse when the pandemic hit, and it really showed how unsustainable the meat market. Everybody dealt with the prices. Everybody dealt with the understanding of how things were produced. And again, if we can produce something that is as compelling, is as versatile, much more nutritious. We have comparable protein, 1-to-1, less total fat, less saturated fat, 0 cholesterol. So again, whether or not you're trying to find that compelling replacement, sustainability is important to you, if diet is important to you, we are trying to check the boxes to make sure that we meet you where you're at. And we realize we have to meet consumers where they are. And sometimes that becomes a challenge, but depending on what category is most important to you, we really try to focus on that and offer you something that is a better option. And there's nothing like trying it for yourself. I don't know if everybody on the call has tried it, but I urge you to go check it out. I helped design the patty for Burger King, which was a huge launch for us. I do think in terms of trying it in a consistent fashion, where maybe the management of expectation of like a quick service restaurant is not super high, you get it's a great experience to test it out, and just see what it's about. But at any rate,
We'll follow up with the presentation just to add on to that, Chef, like after, to contact me, and I'd love to get a sample out to everybody so you can play around with it. And again, like Chef said, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of confusion around plant-based, and maybe Chef, you could even speak to that a little bit around plant-based, and kind of, there's a lot of buzzwords out there, a lot of headlines out there, and really for With Impossible, you've got to try it, and you'll see that we're not going anywhere.
I mean, I think that one of the biggest elephants in the room, and I don't know how my fellow culinary folks feel about it, but GMO has a terrible, rough connotation, but a lot of it is omission and misinformation that's been put out there. Effectively, we can't sustain feeding the world without some sort of GMO, and leaning on GMOs as a resource. Of all soy produced in the United States, 95% is GMO soy. We proudly put bioengineering labels on our product, and we hit it in the forefront. It's not something we're trying to hide. Science leads, and we're trying to use that in a safe and sustainable way to really understand how we feed the world in a more nutritious, more sustainable, and healthier way. Because I do think it is very important as we grow. I don't know what kind of weather you guys have had, but in California, we got dumped on this year with rain, and it's hard not to see the world sort of shifting. I think I read in the article this morning that New York had no snow for 325 days. When does that happen, right? Like it's sort of nuts that some of the things that we were attributing to the change in the world, we're damaging the earth. I mean, there's no question about it, and they're in more ways than one. But I'd love to take questions. I think this is a segue, unless Victoria, you feel like if there's anything that I didn't touch on. Again, one thing is there's so much to talk about with Impossible. There's so many avenues and alleys to sort of duck behind and chat about. Sometimes I miss things, but I try to hit the high notes.
No, Chef, there's a couple of questions here. So
Okay.
we've got, Martin, okay, so how do you incorporate this product into a menu or restaurant concept that's committed? No, there's more, that's committed to using non-GMO?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's something that's been on our radar. It's something that we have focused on. Can we do it? Is it possible? As we expand globally, there are regulatory agencies in other countries that don't accept GMOs or have different requirements. There's different requirements in Canada than even US, which took us a while working with the Canadian government even to get across those lines. So I think it's a great question. Ultimately, right now, there's not a good answer. I mean, because 95% of the soy, we've exhausted some of our attempts at using non-GMO, and ultimately our heme is a genetically modified process. It's not a genetically modified ingredient. Like I said before, it's molecule for molecule exactly the same. But we basically trick a yeast through a fermentation process to produce heme instead of alcohol. So through that fermentation process, what would normally produce alcohol produces that additional heme. And as we centrifuge that yeast off, we end up with the heme, but there are remnants where we have to classify it as a genetically modified ingredient, although it's the heme itself is not genetically modified.
From my experience calling on some national accounts, the reasons why it's non-GMO, I think a lot of time it comes down to sourcing. And I think when we can answer the sourcing, how it's responsibly sourced, and we can dig a little deeper into that and provide that answer, sometimes that objection goes away. But there's been some great comments here, and even in the chat, that I'm gonna read them. So crop yields frequently increase by up to 20% per acre using a GMO. GMO helps us sustain our food sources that withstand weather and changing climate for our farmers. Hey, we need you guys to come and come with me on some sales calls. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, I mean, it's a necessary path to use science. I mean, modern medicine wouldn't be what it is today without science, right? And I think we need to look at all of the ways that we can improve the way that we eat, the way that we treat ourselves as we move forward. And I think it's huge. But I want to pick out a part of that question too that I thought was important. How do you menu it? And I think it's that part's important to me, because if you are in service of your consumer, I do think it's as important to add impossible for two reasons, to more sections than just the entree portion of the menu. It's great to add an appetizer section because some people haven't tried it and they want to not commit to a full entree. It's great to lower the barrier of trial by offering it in an appetizer section of a menu. So they're like, oh, well, we can try it amongst the four of us, and I don't feel as committed to this entree that I may not like, whether it's taste or watching the money in their pocket. It's a great way for them to lean in, but also for the restaurant operator. Why would you bring a SKU in that can't do multiple things on the menu for you? Make it your workhorse. It is versatile. So add it to your appetizer section, add it to your soup section, add it to your entree section. So not only you're capturing that consumer in multiple adoption levels of plant-based, but you're also offering yourself a tool or a SKU that does more than one thing. It's not a one-trick pony. Put it to work. So I think that you're doing yourself a service as an operator, but you're also doing the consumer a service by lowering the barrier for trial and offering them the ability to order something that may not be maybe non-committal to a degree, so they don't have to lean into their entree choice.
So shall I keep up with the?
Keep going. Let's see if we can answer
Do we
some more
want to
questions.
get off of GMO? We have a couple more on GMO. We can talk about, what defines a GMO. Have you considered using or which one do you want to answer first? The more on the GMO to close that off. Let's close off. What defines a GMO?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think I don't know if there is a classical definition for that, just like there's not a classical definition for vegan. I mean, some people consider honey to not be vegan. So in terms of GMOs, I mean, it could be selective farming. It could be how you feed the crops, or the genetics in general. You could change the genetics or down select a specific genetic. Corn, there's different varietals of different products that I think, however you're influencing the farming and selection of those crops, can be considered GMO. I don't know if there's a classical definition, but
Any kind of intervention, I guess, from nature would it be? But what isn't? So
well, I mean, again,
Yeah.
that's sometimes often how I explain it. I was like,
Mhm.
I've got two tomato plants growing side by side one year, and one didn't produce as much as the other one. I
Mhm.
saved seeds from one, I didn't save seeds from the other. That's selective farming. So technically that would categorize. So if you've ever done that, you're guilty.
So how about, has Impossible considered using a different base other than soy?
Of course, yeah, we explore all the time. We're doing testing all the time. We've looked at a ton of different things. I think, again, from I like to explain it like an orchestra. Like if you feel like the woodwinds are out and you fix the woodwinds, then the percussion's all jacked up. Once you solve one thing, you can create 3 or 4 more problems. So it's a balance. It's a balance of nutrition. It's a balance of performance. It's a balance of both nutritional performance and sensory performance. It could be of culinary performance. So it's like you think you solved something, you think you found something to replace soy, but in terms of it, does the flavor influence impact the overall composition of the meat? Do you lose some culinary credibility by utilizing a different protein over another? Do you lose texture? I think that what we've had to do is look at the expanse of all the targets that we're trying to hit, and really select the thing that serves us best and then serves our customers and consumers the best. So yes, we are exhaustive and also very deliberate in our choices.
Thank you. So how about let's go into, I think a lot of people, probably some folks on this call have tried the Impossible Burger at Burger King. Now the question is, are the cooks trained on the use of our product? I can probably answer that one, but we'll see, how often.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a reason for this question. I don't know if Ronald wanted to elaborate, but could you speak to the training that we have? Actually, not just Burger King. I mean,
100%. Yeah. I mean,
that's available.
I designed and launched the product. When we launched it in St. Louis in the US, we went into market and we trained managers so that then they could train their staff. There are back of house training programs enlisted at every QSR restaurant. They have little mini universities, if you will, of training for products, and how we influence those is very important to us. Interestingly enough, when you're at that type of restaurant, less is more. It's delicious. It tastes like meat. Leave it at that. Let's not get into heme at the drive-through, right?
I think it's even the cooking as well. I think the question was about, but
of course, yes. And
product,
when I say I designed the product, like the R&D team is creating, and I've stepped in. Like what I try to do is break the product. Oh shit, it doesn't do this. Oh, it does do this. Oh, high acid, high heat. Like what are we missing here? When we use wheat protein, it was not available to high heat cooking temperatures. You couldn't cook it in a sauce unless you did it a la minute. It would not hot hold. It wasn't available to open flame heat. So as soon as we got the soy protein, that changed that influence. So as soon as that happened, I started picking up the phone and calling equipment manufacturers. I asked them if I could come hang out in their kitchens for a while and use their equipment and bring my product and see what it was. And basically we have 28% greater yield than ground beef. So you start out with a smaller amount of Impossible matched up with beef to have the same end cooked result. So what I did was I really took the format and the target for what Burger King was trying to do, and that helped me to understand what we needed to do to our product in shape, dimension, size, and the influence of the equipment that they use. How do we produce the Burger King experience? Because not only do we want Impossible to be serviced, we want the brand equity of our partners, Burger King in this example, but we want the brand equity of our partners to be established and celebrated as well. Impossible Whopper, that's two companies coming together. That's synergy. It's greater than the sum of its parts. We're using our brand equity from Impossible and using Burger King's equity to create a recognizable product where to be able to change that. So hopefully that helps. I mean, I do think that it was very important for us to nail sort of the brand equity piece, but also the identity of the Whopper. It was important of us that how do we get our product to make sure that we create that influence in that specific setting. And we do it with we do it same thing with Starbucks. Everybody knows they use a Turbo Chef, right? In their setup. So how does our product react, respond, and how do we influence that? Definitely. My team is highly involved in that step for sure.
So more on the direction that we're going. There's questions about pork and bacon. So in Canada, we do have RTE breakfast sausage that Chef talks about. That's the turbos, but we also, and there's a lot of talk about bacon. Are we working on bacon? Are we working on whole muscle?
Yeah. Let's go down that. I'll give you the big synopsis. We started out with worst first. I told you we're a sustainability company, mission-based company. Beef has the largest detriment on the planet. Pork is second. Chicken is after that. So not every protein is not created equal in terms of its detriment on sustainability metrics. And back to the life cycle analysis. Obviously, chicken is not as detrimental pound for pound, land, greenhouse gas, and water as beef is. So we didn't focus on it first. We wanted to hit the high notes with the beef, and then we moved into pork. We do have ground pork in the United States. We have the ground pork sausage that is a pre-cooked patty in Canada. In terms of whole muscles, again, we go back to our ethos. We won't put out something unless it's as good or better than the animal counterpart. We have explored whole muscle, but we don't feel like we've really hit the mark in terms of our own expectation. We're our worst critic, and we should be. It's our responsibility to make sure that we deliver a product and, again, put our money where our mouth is in terms of making sure that we do produce that compelling product. We don't want to unravel our progress in terms of you trusting us as a plant-based meat company when in putting out something that's not quite there yet. So bacon's a tough one. You have that striated layer of fat. You have the whole muscle, the textural component, and we may be able to produce it on a small scale, but then how do you manufacture that? How do you produce it commercially? You figure out how to do it once, and then you try to figure out how to do it a million times over. But some things are harder than others. Sometimes we don't have the same, we're not pulling from an animal, right? So we start with the small ingredients and have to get bigger. Animals start with the whole cuts and then you go smaller. So we're really working the system backwards. And I think we have to also think about that in the commercialization process. It's not always the same. It's not even always similar. Sometimes it's a very intricate way to get the end result. But the short answer to the question is yes. Pork, chicken, fish, dairy, eggs. You can't replace animals in the global food system unless you really understand all the products that make up that replacement. And I think that bacon and everything else mentioned is part of that. It's just how do we cast these wide nets and offer products that are widely available, widely interested, or people are widely interested in, but all product categories will be on our list. It just depends on what's next, what comes first and what comes second and what comes third. And we have to be deliberate in those choices so that we are smart business folks. You can't do everything. I think that as chefs, we try, but we realize when you spread yourself thin, you start to reduce. And what's better, to do 10 things at 80% or 8 things at 100%?
That's absolutely right. And as a salesperson, I'm always going, give me more to sell. My customers want this. The customers, I'm getting asked for bacon. I'm getting asked for more whole muscle. But I'm thankful that Impossible takes so long with their R&D. It's annoying as a salesperson, but it's still super important. Oh,
yeah. My favorite quote that I take from my kitchens, and I guess I'm trying to instill it in Impossible: done is not better than perfect.
That's right. So Ronald has shared his screen. He has unshared his screen. Okay. Grand opening, grand closing. Okay. But there's been a lot of good conversation. So our process, Chef, do you want to talk about our process? Is it proprietary? Are other companies using similar methods?
I can't necessarily speak to other companies. What I can talk about is we have 150 patents plus. So there's a lot of proprietary components. Heme being one of them. We have a patent on that, so no one else can use heme in terms of influencing their product on flavor. We discovered it and we are able to use that. But basically, I've done it. You can actually, Victoria, maybe we can share the link on the ingredient demo. I've actually put together many times on camera and for presentations.
That'd be a good one.
A small scale of how we bring the burger together: the soy protein, the cellulose, the fat content, the heme, the water, and build a burger right in front of you. And as those processes come together, I mean, necessarily on a manufacturing level, think of a large KitchenAid mixer, the size of a transfer truck. All it is a large mixer that takes all these ingredients in very specific sequence and timing to produce this at scale. So it's really well-known, or to this group, I hope, well-known ingredients that are put together in a new way that have never been done before. But the result is something net new, and we've done that with Impossible. And I think that when you see the sort of behind the scenes and behind the curtain of how it's put together, it becomes less scary, I guess. People sort of freak out about the process it takes, but once you see it, you're like, oh, that's all. That's
and not to scale, but you could do that in your kitchen, as you to your point, right? You can do it, and that's the link that I'll probably share that link with everybody, because that's
it just sort of breaks down the barriers of understanding when it's just like, wow, it's that simple. I had no idea.
So Chef Adelina is asking, can you name some of the products that you sell? I think that do you mean in Canada in food service? It is the burger, the brick, which is 1-to-1 with ground beef.
That's a 4 or 5 pound case, 20 pound case.
And I can definitely share all that with you afterwards, as well as a chicken nugget and ready to eat pork breakfast patty.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we have more products that in the US. I mean, I hate to tease, but if you were ever looking at the product, the overall product category, I mean, we have ready-made meals in retail. We have other partnerships with companies. Buitoni, the pasta company, they've made a ravioli with our products. So we've had synergies with building products with other companies. I would say that the reason I don't want to tempt you, but at the same time, I point to the
Or
US
makes me cry.
in terms of the development is like it's only a matter of time before that trickles down and becomes
That's right.
more widely available, including Canada. So we have a ground pork product. It's modeled after 70-30 ground pork, chicken nuggets. We have a lot of products down the line in development that are soon to launch. So it's just we're working as fast as we can. But remember, 6 years ago, we were in 25 locations when I started. Now, just in the United States alone, we're in like 75,000 in food service and retail. That's 6 years. I mean, it's hard to grow that fast and not have some hiccups, make some mistakes, have some hindsight, like, oh shit moments. You just look back on it and we're learning every day. We don't know what we don't know, but we're trying to move as fast as we can. And with that, of course, there's plenty of people saying like, you should have done this. And it's like, yeah, probably. Right. But hindsight is everything. And you can't beat yourself up. This is I guess even a personal lesson that I've learned myself. You look hindsight, you didn't have all that information. You did the best with the information that you had. And I think that's all you can do. And I mean, look in hindsight, it's easy to beat yourself up. It's easy for people to beat us up, but got a lot of smart people working for Impossible Foods, a lot of food service industry vets, a lot of heavy pedigree degree folks with PhDs, et cetera. I mean, everything is deliberate choice, and we're doing the best we can. I think that we've done a pretty compelling job and expanded pretty fast. So
yeah, I think doing the best you can with good intentions is definitely key, and I think that's Impossible's really doing a good job there. Personally, I think
that's why I've been there so long.
I'm just a year in, so that's actually what brought me on board. I like the good intention.
My personal values are so similar to the company's. It's a really great place to work.
So we're gonna get technical here.
Okay.
So has the 3D printing approach been considered for the optic appeal for shape and marbling effect?
Yeah, I think that, there are parallel initiatives, I think, in both cell-based meat as well as 3D printing. Ultimately, what my understanding of the economics of that is they're a long way away in terms of making it accessible to the customers and consumers. Is it off or not? I doubt it, but it's maybe decades away from being a economical choice. So I just don't know if we've met that yet. Am I saying stop working on it? It's you shouldn't do that. Not at all. I just think that we are closer in, we are nearer to parity with our approach than say 3D printing and or cell-based meat. So as it stands, it's not something that I think that we've explored, but again, be thinking creatively, comprehensively, and critically about every single problem is part of solving it.
Now pardon my ignorance here, I'm just going to flat out read this and you can ask the question if you need more info. So I want to see, so Martin says, I want to see what you do with CRISPR, capital CRISPR, down the road. I don't know.
That's DNA. If I'm, I don't think that we've really delved into that specifically. That may be a technical question out of my realm. But ultimately, we're using a plant-derived team. Everything is plant-based sourcing for us. We don't change any genetics on our side. We do source ingredients. So our textured vegetable protein is sourced in the United States, and all of our individual ingredients are sourced from other companies. We don't personally make them. The only thing that we do produce is the heme that influences our product. So I don't know if I botched your question or answer to your question, but I think that may be more in the cell-based realm of
Okay, so I'll move on. If you wanted to, I'll send a follow-up email. And if anybody wants to send some of those questions, I can always get those answered by the appropriate people, because I think that's probably the best thing to do. We have kind of a comment here from Casper. So not a question. I was vegan from, I hope you don't mind me reading this out. It's for everyone, but vegan from 2017 to 2019. And Chef J. Michael, I wanted you to comment on this. He finds the process of caring about the entire cooking process looking real to be very impressive. It was something he always struggled with when looking for vegan options. And I think that's important comment, I think, as we talk about Impossible and some of the products that have come out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's knowing your audience. Again, like when I said before, like vegans and vegetarians, we love them, we accept them, but typically, in my experience, you've had two categories of vegans and vegetarians: those that are doing it solely for animal welfare. They really enjoy their burgers, enjoy their meat, but they just can't get over the fact that, you know, the detriment to animals. And the others, they don't like the smell, the look, the ick that they get from thinking about meat and meat production. So if it's too close to the animal, sometimes they don't like our product because it is that close, right? So those that have chosen to go towards a vegan and vegetarian diet for environmental reasons really lean into our product, because we're giving them their burger back. You know, they've missed it so, and offering them that one-to-one experience, and while they can still hold on to their ethical ideas, has been really tremendous for them. So I do think it's really important. It's important to me that we hold on to that identity and make sure that we are producing a product that has those meat-like characteristics throughout the whole process.
Well, Chef J. Michael, thank you so much for
100%.
Enlightening us to you're sharing the knowledge that you've imparted with us. Food for thought. More conversation, I think, coming from the future. To all our members on the call here and our presidents, this video will be shared. If this is a further conversation in sustainability, in foods, in agriculture, in food production, we need, as chefs and professionals in this industry, we need to keep this conversation going. So let's continue to better educate ourselves and move forward. I do want to say, now that we've had a little bit of knowledge from Chef J. Michael, and we talked a little bit about the product, who's ready to put their money where their mouths is? Who's ready to step up and challenge themselves with working with a little bit of Impossible? Can you bring Impossible to your home? Can you bring it to your kitchens? Can you make a pretty dish with Impossible food that tastes great and sounds enticing? Members, we would like to be able to offer you tonight by getting in touch with Victoria, and we're going to have ourselves a little bit of a contest. And we're going to show up and have some fun working with some of this product. You guys will have the opportunity to work with us at your own home. If you want to share your contact information with Victoria by this Friday.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll send a follow-up. I'll send the proper presentation. Thanks, Chef David. And I'll send that out to everybody. And what we want to do is just a little contest. It's really take a picture of make a recipe. Take a picture. You don't need to provide the recipe. It's really just a description of what you did and make it pretty. So the prize pack will include an Impossible cookbook and some other little things, as well as bragging rights. And we'd love for you to share that. And Chef David can speak more about how you can share that. But I will send something out. Please send me your contact information by this Friday, February 3rd. You'll have about a month to put something together and submit it, and we'll provide more information there. But I will find a way to get product out to you, whether it's sample or a coupon. You can go pick it up at the grocery store, and you could have some fun with the Impossible product.